American physicist Leonard Susskind said this, and it makes me wonder if he hasn't been listening to Happy Life Studios podcast the last couple of weeks, except for the fact that he wrote it in his book, The Black Hole War, which came out like 17 years ago. Anyway, he said this, quote, "Unforeseen surprises are the rule in science, not the exception. Remember, stuff happens," end quote. See what I mean? That's what we've been talking about in Happy Life Studios the last couple of weeks. It lines up right with what the author Nora Raleigh Baskin said as well when she said, quote, "But really, if you ask me, there's only one kind of plot. One. Stuff happens. That's it," end quote. Yeah, exactly. Stuff happens. The problem is this. It's what Kelly Corrigan, also author, said this, quote, "We're never ready for the things that happen. When the big stuff happens, we're always looking in the other direction," end quote. Does that track with anybody else listening? or just me? Oftentimes when stuff happens, we're not ready for it. It comes as a surprise. That's why we got to stay alert, because stuff happens. And I really like what Terry McKeever said, who was a former college and even an Olympic swimming coach, when it comes to stuff happening. She said that, quote, "Failure and setbacks and struggles." Okay, first of all, I thought this was Happy Life Studios podcast. I thought we're talking about being happy here. You're gonna quote someone who the first 5 words are failure and setbacks and struggles. Well, follow along here, because Terry McKeever said, "Failure and setbacks and struggles are where all the good stuff happens," end quote. That's where all the good stuff happens. Maybe that's why we're not always catching it when the big things happen. We're looking in the other direction because we don't realize that oftentimes the good stuff that happens is coming from failure and setbacks and struggles. With all that being said, I'd like to talk a little about the recent flooding tragedy that happened in Texas over the 4th of July weekend. Was that the Guadalupe River, Guadalupe River? I'm not sure, but it was a pretty tragic situation. So again, why in the world? This is Happy. What in the world are you doing, Steve-O? Why will we talk about tragedy from a podcast named Happy Life? Well, I've got a handful of reasons. The first one is what I just said. Actually, it's what Terry McKeever said when she said that failure and setbacks and struggles, that's where all the good stuff happens. That's why I want to talk about it here. But secondly, I want to talk about this stuff because stuff happens. I also want to talk about it here because we define here at Happy Life Studios a happy life as a lifestyle where one secures and sustains happy despite the circumstances. So when the failure and setbacks and struggles and difficulties and ugliness of life happens, we can still secure and sustain happy. And sometimes that's where life is a lot of the time, is in that. So that's another reason why I want to talk about the failure and setbacks and struggles and the scary parts of life that just can get ugly and discouraging. We need to talk about that because those things happen a lot, but they don't need to take us out. Because number 4, if we know what to do when stuff happens, then we can live a happy life. We can't wait until things happen, till stuff happens to make a plan at that point. I grew up in the Midwest, and people had a plan if a tornado hits. If you go down to Florida, I guarantee you people have a plan if a hurricane is going to hit. You can't wait until you get the news. You need to have a plan. Well, if we know what to do when stuff happens before the stuff happens, then we can live a happy life. You probably wonder why I'm saying stuff weird. I'm saying stuff because there's another word that we could put in there. Listen to the last couple weeks of podcast, especially the last episode, and you'll see what I'm talking about there. But we need to talk about this stuff because we need to have a plan. We can't wait until we're beat up and down and have no energy left to come up with a plan. At that point, we need to have a plan already. And lastly, of why we can talk about tragedies and setbacks and failures and the difficult things of life is because when stuff happens, if we ignore or bottle it up, sadness and despair and anxiety and fear and all sorts of other ugly things will come in and they'll overwhelm us, just like a flood. There's a lot of things that happen in that flood that are confusing, that are creating all sorts of negative stuff, and that's what you would expect a tragedy to do. But there's more to this than that. So without disrespecting or dishonoring those that have gone through that flooding or know someone else who's gone through that flooding or any other tragedy, I want to read this. I want to talk about this because I think this actually honors instead of dishonors. So here's the post. It starts like this, quote, "Flash floods have always been a part of life in the Texas Hill Country. We get those alerts on our phones, the kinds that blare like Amber Alerts, nearly every time the skies darken. For most of us, it means avoiding low water crossings, watching the rain gauge fill, and hoping maybe, just maybe, our thirsty lakes will drink their fill. But this was different. What came in the night wasn't just rain, it was a reckoning. A violent, rising wall of water that didn't knock, it broke down the doors. Meteorologist Travis Herzog put it simply, flash floods are among the hardest weather events to predict. No meteorologist could have told you with high confidence more than a few hours in advance that this much rain would fall in those exact locations, he said. Even with double the normal staff at the monitoring station for our region, no model foresaw the worst, because what happened was beyond the worst case scenario. The atmosphere defied the forecast. The storms exceeded even the worst projections of the computer models, both in coverage and amounts of heavy rain. Still, the National Weather Service issued warnings as the event unfolded in real time. A flood watch went out at 12:41 a.m., forecasting up to 7 inches of rain. Then at 4:03 a.m., a flash flood emergency. Evacuate immediately. Seek higher ground. But by then, in places like Kerrville, Hunt, Centerpoint, Streeter, and Ingram, tiny towns tucked in the folds of the hill country, it was already too late. The Guadalupe River rose 34 feet in 2 hours. Imagine that, they say. 34 feet in darkness while people slept, in homes tucked far from cell service, on land where neighbors are separated by acres, not fences. The water came with rage, a half a foot higher every minute, carrying trees, metal, cars, walls. It tore buildings from their foundations. It erased entire RV parks. It killed. And now more than 100 people are gone, end quote. Normally right now I would play for you our intro song, but I want to do something a little different today. I want to play something that we can take some moments of silence and some moments of stillness. If you believe in God, this would be a good time to pray for those that are involved. I do want to say thank you to all who joined us today. We are so happy that you did. And I want to say the same thing I've been saying the last couple of weeks. To all the happy lifers out there, stuff happens. 3 episodes ago, we talked with Joe Mojo McCarthy, our brother studio down in Southern California, Orange County. We talked about Shtuff Happens, Now What? And then the week after, which was our last episode, we talk about Shtuff Happens, So Make Shtuff Happen. And today I want to talk about Shtuff Happens, and I want to quote a line that we said before is just 3 words. Shtuff happens. Seek higher ground. Seek higher ground. You have the low road, you have the high road. When stuff happens, seek higher ground. Which takes me back to what this person wrote. Like I said, those words I read in the beginning, they weren't my words. I snagged them from a Happy Lifer who snagged them from a post someone else shared on their page. But it was written by a person by the name of Bex Hale, Bexhale. And another reason I want to talk about this tragedy is because there's a lot of people out there talking about this tragedy, and they're doing it, I'm sorry, they're just doing it wrong. And you'll see what I'm talking about as I finish this post that Bex Hale wrote. Bex continues, quote, "So who's to blame? That question has begun to echo across social media, in hushed conversations, in angry ones. People want someone to point at, someone to hold responsible for the unbearable weight of loss. But I urge you," Beck says, "to pause. Because I remember a flood like this 10 years ago when my own hometown of Wimberley was ravaged in the night by another flash flood. Entire families swept away, homes ripped off their slabs, our beloved Blanco River turning into a monster. And back then, we didn't ask who was to blame." Oh, I like that so much. Man, this is why Beck says, we cried, we prayed, we showed up. We linked arms, strangers, neighbors, friends. We searched the riverbanks. We rescued pets from crumbling homes. We passed out hot meals, clean water, and diapers. We took in the displaced, fed the volunteers, wrapped the grieving in blankets. We were hashtag Wimberley Strong. That's what I call seeking higher ground. I get it, when tragedy happens, we want to blame. But that's the low road. Seek higher ground. Check out what Bex Hale says next. That we were hashtag Wimberley Strong, not because we looked for someone to blame, but because we looked for someone to help. Seek higher ground. Then Beck says that choice is in front of you right now. You can rage or you can reach out. That's what I mean by talking about this in the wrong way. We're talking about this and we can rage. And I get it. When tragedy happens, it's natural for us to want to rage because this is wrong. It's not right. When life is unfair, when bad things happen, that rage naturally rises up. Well, we can focus on, the choice is in front of us right now. As Beck said, we can either rage or we can reach out. Beck says that, quote, you can look for fault lines or you can look for someone to help. This flood, she said, was no one's fault. It was a freak convergence of nature's fury. Unpredictable, unstoppable, and unforgiving. But, Beck says, what happens next is in our control. That's where our power lies, she said. To get angry at a flood that came in and wiped out a bunch of people, that's natural. But to rage over it, to seek for someone to blame, to take the lower road and cause more damage and pain, that doesn't make sense to me. Seek higher ground. And what does that look like? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad I asked. Bex goes on and answers it. She says, quote, so go, period. So go. Volunteer with search crews combing the riverbanks. Give to organizations that are on the ground. Hold hands, open your wallet, open your heart. Tell your children you love them. Tell your neighbors you're here. Tell the broken they are not alone. Tragedy has come. That part is done. What we do now, who we are now, that's the story still being written. Let it be one of grace, of grit, of fierce love in the face of grief. Let it be the kind of story that proves the hill country may flood, but it does not fall. Say what you will about Texas, but when the rivers rise, so do we. Not with blame, not with bitterness, but with boots on the ground, arms around strangers, and hearts wide open. That's the Texas I know, and that's the America I believe in." End quote. Well said, Bex Hale. When I heard her talk about that's the Texas that I know, that I believe in, I immediately thought of you, Happy Lifers. And I want to read that last part with the way my mind read it. Say what you will about Happy Lifers, but when the rivers rise, so do we. Not with blame, not with bitterness, but with boots on the ground, arms around strangers, and hearts wide open. That's the Happy Lifers I know, and that's the Happy Lifers I believe in. And that's how I feel about you, Happy Lifers. That's why I put you in there. And just like I wonder if American physicist Leonard Susskind is a happy lifer, I wonder if John Candy wasn't a happy lifer as well. Well, in the same way that Leonard Susskind wrote his quote 17 years ago, John Candy died like in the 1990s or whatever. But so he might not have been a happy lifer because we didn't start Happy Life until, like 10 years ago or so, a little bit longer than that. But his heart is a happy lifer heart. I mean, he embodies what a happy lifer looks like. He embodies what Bex Hale says that Texans look like. Check out this post. Quote, "On the set of Splash, 1984, a sudden downpour sent everyone scrambling for shelter. Except Candy, he stayed behind, helping the crew save valuable gear, joking to keep morale up, and literally saving thousands in equipment with his hands-on help." That came out of a Facebook post that I've seen several times on social media. I don't know if it went viral or not. I just know I've seen it several times, so I'm guessing that it did. But I wanted to share it with you because I feel like it goes right along with what Bex Hale is talking about. And I know this podcast has been kind of heavy, but I think it's important. And now I want to end it. I want to wrap it all up with happy lifer John Candy. He might not have been a happy lifer, but I tell you what he did right here certainly embodies the heart of a happy lifer. Let me read this post now. Quote, "While filming planes, trains, and automobiles in the brutal Midwest winter of 1987, Steve Martin noticed something special about John Candy. Amidst biting winds and endless snow, Candy's quiet kindness transformed the set's mood. Unlike most stars who took shelter in heated trailers between takes, John often stayed outside, chatting with crew, lifting spirits, and passing out cups of fresh coffee he'd arranged himself, after realizing that the catering truck only had lukewarm brew." But John Candy's compassion wasn't a one-time act. During Uncle Buck in 1989, he realized that younger crew members were surviving on vending machine snacks because the meal budget focused on lead talent. Candy, without fanfare or seeking praise, hired a hot food truck at his own expense, making sure everyone ate a warm meal on those long days. When Chris Columbus directed John Candy in Only the Lonely, 1991, he saw the same empathy in action. Candy would learn every crew member's name by day 3, starting each morning with a personal greeting and ending each night with a handshake and thanks. If a birthday was overlooked, Candy would quietly arrange a cake and music so no one felt invisible. How do you get to be like that? What possesses when so many stars and actors were doing the opposite? When they were maybe even taking the low road, John Candy was taking the high road. What caused that to happen? I think it's what comes next in the post. Quote, "His humility was forged in Toronto's Second City during the 1970s when John juggled every backstage job imaginable, hauling equipment, cleaning stages, helping wherever needed. That experience grounded him for life. No job was too small or person unworthy of respect." On the set of Splash, 1984, I read this earlier. A sudden downpour sent everyone scrambling for shelter except Candy. He stayed behind, helping the crew save valuable gear, joking to keep morale up, and literally saving thousands in equipment with his hands-on help. The Great Outdoors, 1988. brought another test. As the late night shoot stretched into the early hours, Candy noticed shivering crew members. He quietly ordered heaters and blankets at his own expense, making sure no one suffered when there was a solution at hand. Man, that's who I want to be. I want to be like that, and I'm working on being like that. And Happy Lifers, that's what we do. That's what Happy Life is all about.
That's what we do.
He never believed in special treatment either. On a remote shoot, when he learned the crew was stuck in coach while stars flew first class, Candy swapped his seat for a tired camera assistant, never announcing it, just doing the right thing. Seek higher ground. John Candy's legacy, the Post says, isn't just about comedy or memorable movies. It's about the warmth, generosity, and humanity he brought to the people around him, especially those Hollywood often overlooks. He gave up his trailer if wardrobe needed it, paid for overtime if the crew was exhausted, and always uplifted those who made the magic happen. He never sought headlines, never mentioned these acts in interviews. For John, it was simple. True success is lifting others as you climb. And that's seeking higher ground. The last line of this post says, in an industry obsessed with stars, John Candy made everyone on the team feel like one. In an industry obsessed with stars, John Candy, who was a star. But as we read this whole post, we see why he was a star. It wasn't just his acting, it was his life. John Candy made everyone feel like a star. So I want to do it one more time with this post. I want to replace John Candy with Happy Lifers, because that's the heart of a Happy Lifer, is what John Candy is portraying here. So in the same way I did it in the last post, I want to do it in this post. For Happy Lifers, it's simple. True success is lifting others as you climb. In an industry obsessed with stars, Happy Lifers make everyone on the team feel like stars. Even if so many people are going for the low road, not Happy Lifers, we seek higher ground. Stuff happens, so seek higher ground.
Make someone happy. Make just one someone happy, and you will be happy too.
Because if you ask me, there's only one kind of plot. One, stuff happens. That's it. And remember, life isn't perfect. Sometimes it's full of failures and setbacks and struggles.
Steve A's.
But when that's the case, let's remember that that's where all the good stuff happens.